Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast, yet to be named, here with our first guest, Vesper Arcade, one of the final remaining warriors for Street Fighter V content creation on YouTube. How you doing, man?
Hey, what's up, buddy? Dude, I'm super pumped to be part of this podcast. I've never been invited to a podcast before, so I'm very humbled and excited to do this.
And I'm
finally
excited to
a
have
guest
you on.
character on the show.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know what? I'm glad you brought that up. It's a great segue, and we didn't rehearse that. But speaking of like new characters, we have Seth for Street Fighter V, or as I'm calling her, Jury 2.0.
Yes.
How do you feel about that character?
Seth is literally a meme character come true. There are so many people that predicted Seth to be a female character because we got a last-second hint that the next character was going to be female, but we also had very strong information the next character was going to be Seth. So people are already joking around. It's like, oh, then clearly it's a female Seth. And that meme came true.
So now we have two boss characters who have the exact same idea, because Bison does the same thing with the Cammy alternate. Well, it's Cammy with the Bison alternate in Street Fighter 4, right? Because Bison had an idea of taking her body when his body failed, right?
Yeah.
So
it's a Capcom thing. Definitely a Capcom thing.
To be fair,
clones are taking over.
That character has me very excited, mainly because I'm getting Rogue flashbacks because he can steal moves, which is so sick to me. The only thing I wish, it's kind of a deal breaker, I hate the male voice he retains, even in the female body.
That is actually a very hot topic right now. A lot of people are talking about that too. They're like, man, this character would have been really cool if it was the female character voice, but then you're supposed to still know it's Seth. I mean, yeah, it can go either way. I definitely see that. I mean, I don't think Seth was ever a popular character to begin with.
Honestly,
so that's
it's one of the weirdest choices they could have made. I feel like from a business standpoint, like you can tell that Japan is very much like art first, which is cool. Yeah. But from a business standpoint, if I was like the CEO, I'd be like, no, who do they want? Who's like the number one pulled character? Well, it's this. Right. Give it to him. But instead they gave Seth, which I feel like is not only not a super popular character, but like leaning on the lower end of popularity too. Like towards the end of the line, I feel like. Well, he's a boss character. He's a one-off boss character is what you think of him as, right?
Right. Like I was in crazy denial when I heard of the Gil and Seth rumors, because they were very, very strong. And I'm like, no way. If you look, I look at the character popularity poll they have on that CFN website all the time. They did a survey, to see what people want. And to see them like, oh man, Gil and Seth, I'm like, there's no way. But once Gil got announced, I'm like, it looks like it's gonna be Seth, right? I was very convinced at that point.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't want to jump ahead too much, buddy, but like, this kind of leads into the other rumor now that Street Fighter V is ready to pack it up. We're getting ready to move on. Yeah, and if you think about it from that perspective, like, okay, if Capcom's like, okay, we're gonna release our final batch of characters, then these boss characters do complete the game. Like it allows these characters to be put into the arcade modes. They have Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 3 arcade modes. They could be the boss characters. Like right now, Gil, I don't know if you know, he's got a boss version of Gil right now. Mm-hmm. If you play the Street Fighter 3 arcade mode, he's got Resurrection and he's all OP.
God, I did not know that.
Yeah, they really did like put in Gil, like it's intact. So it does complete the game. If you look at the character select screen, it's nice and neat and tidy, 40 characters even. I think Capcom's ready to pack it up.
Yeah, that's good, but it also makes me a bit sad because I wanted to see some characters return. And Seth is a very monumental character in terms of like his moveset too, because once again, an attack for every single character. Mm-hmm. And he even shapeshifts a bit depending on the character that he's stealing the move from. Which I'm wondering how it's going to look with certain alternates, because the one, he has that big goofy scarf, which is one that I think I would want to use. But does a scarf get huge with him too? Like, is the clothing going to scale up? It's going to look really funny if it does, but if it didn't, he would clip through it. So it would look incorrect. So I imagine
the summer costume looks sick.
Yeah, the summer outfit, it's hilarious to me because it reminds me of that question, like, do you find mannequins attractive? And I look at it and I'm like, that's a sexy mannequin. Like Seth is a sexy mannequin because that's what he looks like. He's even a different color he's not silver, he's white. Like he's chrome white. So it's very interesting to me. Pearl, I think, is the name for that color. So, but yeah, the summer outfit looks great. I like the idea that Seth wanted to be sexy. That's funny to me too. I like the idea of that.
There's a lot of things that end up being better than we thought. Like, well, first off, to look on the bright side about, wanting different character stuff. I mean, look at on the bright side, guys. I mean, if you wanted Rose or Makoto, C Viper, etc., I mean, hey, that means these characters have a higher chance of being in Street Fighter 6, Just look forward for the next title, instead of being at the tail end of the game, and then we never see these characters again, because Kaz was like, we just released these characters. So look on the bright side on that.
That's what I always thought too, but then Poison keeps making it into each game. And I'm like, we just had Poison, and she ends up in every single game. It really blows my mind.
I have a crazy conspiracy theory that Poison was never intended to be Poison. I think Capcom wanted that character to be Roxy.
Oh.
And they decided last second to change her name to Poison because they thought she would sell more because it's a more recognized name. Yeah. Because the way that she plays and all of that, and you look at the story and all of that, it just seems like Capcom would retcon it last second. It really does seem.
Yeah, and it would have made sense to go with Roxy because they're doing the whole Final Fight thing. There's so many characters from Final Fight that are in this game, including the one girl who I really want to try. She's one of the reasons I wanted to come back to Street Fighter V, the blonde girl with the fire kicks. She seems like a lot of fun.
The blonde girl with the fire kicks. Lucia.
Yeah, Lucia seems like a ton of fun. And she has like the cowgirl outfit, and I'm Texan, so I'm like, yeah, get it, girl. But so it would work well to me. So this is a fun like next topic because we're talking about like, you know, what could have been. If not Seth, what's the DLC character you would have wanted to see the most for Street Fighter V?
I see. That's the thing. This is going to be a really boring answer, but I am not like a character kind of guy. I'm more of a function kind of guy. I don't really like. Well, I guess that's another bad way of saying it. I'm open-minded to play any character. Like any character can interest me. I'm not looking for something, you know, specific. I need this specific character. I guess the one thing that's left out in Street Fighter right now is Rekkas. We don't have any like Rekka Ken characters, so we're missing characters like Fei Long, Yang, Rolental. I was even looking forward to Poison because Poison has a Rekka in Street Fighter 4 and Cross
exactly.
Second. So I'm like, hey, we're kind of missing that. It would be nice to see it, but like I said, I am interested in many characters. I play almost every character in Street Fighter 5, so I'm down for whatever. When
I show my friends who aren't very good at fighting games a Rekka character, it's like what I always try to point them to because I'm like, look, it's a 3-hit combo. You just do the same string, like quarter circle, quarter circle, quarter circle, and you get like the 3 hits, you know? So I'm like, it's easy. It's a combo character for you. I think for me, I'm really shocked that C. Viper didn't make it in because she's in like 4 different endings. I really thought she was going to be in. And then Makoto would have been a good fit. Like, I agree Makoto would have been fun for Street Fighter V because she's like a slower character with like really hard-hitting, like moves that just beg to be crush counters. Right, because she like hits so hard, but it's
she's
all
definitely
right.
A Street Fighter 5 character.
She could be in Street Fighter 6, and it'll be fine. And what's sad is that I brought this up in a different video recently, but everyone keeps wanting Melina and MK11, and for a while people were saying, well, don't freak out because Melina could just be in MK12, and then she'll look even better. But it's been rumored that MK12 is going to be a prequel set before any of the games. It's going to be in the Great Kung Lao era, so before Liu Kang and them were even born. So if that's the case, then there wouldn't be Melina because she's not been created. So if that ends up being true, like MK11 is the only shot that a lot of Melina fans have. Otherwise, she's just not in the game. She won't be in MK12 either. Now, that could be completely not true. But I think that'd be a pretty fun idea because Goro lives for very long. So Goro would still be there. Shang Tsung lives for thousands of years. He'd still be there. Katana is like, I think in one of the games she claims she's like 10,000 years old or something. Which is ridiculous to think about.
I think I heard that in the movie. The movie is where I learned that.
Yeah, she's very old, which is crazy to think about because that means like if she dates Liu Kang, even if like she doesn't like him that much, he's mortal, so he would just die and she could move on to the next guy. She just rides it out for 100 years and he drops dead. Like not a big deal. But now he's immortal because according to MK11's ending, like him and her are both immortal now. So she's stuck with him.
Yeah, the story's getting wild. Even though they just rebooted the game, the story's already getting wild, man.
Yeah, well, I think I thought about it yesterday. It's pretty clear they wanted it to be like a trilogy, like a movie. So this is the end of the trilogy, which is why they reset it again, because they didn't want to keep going. They didn't want to make like another Deadly Alliance, another Deception. They wanted to just do 3 and then reset again, or just go back in time again, which honestly could be a lot of fun if they do what they did in MK9 and like switch it up with like, oh, but this is happening now instead, and it wasn't supposed to. And the joke could be that, oh, Liu Kang and Katana are messing with things in the background. That could be really interesting.
Yeah, I think redoing stories for fighting games works. Most of these characters are just really iconic. You know the base things about the character, right? What kind of character they are, their personality, or what like their values are and such. And I don't think people really care if you keep retelling their story as long as you keep those core things intact. And people just want to know more. I don't think they want to. I mean, there are some characters that want to see, you know, an older Johnny Cage or an old man Ryu and such. But I do think retelling the story in different ways is fine as well for fighting games, as long as they're still recognizable. Capcom's really paranoid of that, where they're like, they wanted to do like an old man Ryu, but they're like, they want people to see Ryu and instantly know that, hey, that's Ryu. Like, they're really paranoid of that in general.
Well, so, to be fair, it's a scary subject again, because like I was thinking again, like CEO man, if I was like heading a company, if you jump forward even like 10 years, I think Street Fighter V takes place several years after some of the other games. It's not before, it's before Third Strike, but it's still like later. I mean, Bison has the white hair. He's aging, right?
Right.
People are getting older. You can only do that a couple of more times, and at that point, it's going to be absurd that Ryu is still fighting even.
Exactly.
Right? So, and it's the same problem with Mortal Kombat, where I think Johnny is pushing 50. He's like 55 or something, which is like quasi-believable because he's like a super athlete. So maybe he can do it. But if you go to MK12 and keep going forward, you can't have Johnny Cage in the game anymore. It's going to be a joke. So as a CEO, man, I'm like, stop it. Just keep them in the exact same time period in every single game. Or how about this? Street Fighter 4 is like Monday and Street Fighter 5 is a Wednesday. Like we're gonna go forward like days at a time, and that way the game can just live forever.
Bro. Yeah,
and it
like you don't want to write yourself in a wall. And this is a situation that happened with Street Fighter 3. They tried moving on past Ryu and Ken, and it failed miserably in that aspect. And they had to add these characters in, and Chun-Li as well. And that it's funny because Street Fighter 4 takes place before Street Fighter 3. Street Fighter 5 takes place before Street Fighter 3. They wrote themselves into a wall. And like I said, Mortal Kombat will run into this situation again unless they just make it a trilogy and retell the story. And you cannot these characters can't move on. Like I said, they're so iconic. And that's the only way to do it properly.
What they should have done, if like maybe they weren't quite big enough or were afraid to do this, but if they want to try like new characters like that, just make a separate tie-in game that relates to it. Like that would have been better. Like Third Strike could have been its own game. Don't call it Street Fighter, just call it Third Strike, or call it like, I don't know, some new creative name. I'm drawing a blank. But
I hear
you have all the characters, and then you can make a crossover fighting game where it's like Third Strike cross Street Fighter, and like they would have all the characters coming together, and you could just make even more money that way. It's a bit of a gamble, but it's going to be a lot more successful than making a Street Fighter game where most of the Street Fighter characters aren't there. Because that was the big issue, right? Like, where are all my characters? They're all gone. So you got to be careful with stuff like that. It's kind of like when they made Darkstalkers. That was a super clever idea. You couldn't have made like Street Fighter like in the dark or whatever it would be called, and like it's like only Ryu and Chun-Li fighting all these horror monsters. Like no one would have liked it.
Yeah.
So it's got to be something different. Which is a braver idea. Ed Boon has talked about that. He wants to move away from doing just Mortal Kombat and Injustice.
Interesting.
He also wanted to move away from doing fighting games at all. He wanted to try something new. And he had like some crazy out there idea that was pretty interesting. It kind of sounded like Mortal Kombat Conquest, but it was going to be online, where you're in like this interactive world and you can run around and fight people, but it's like an MMO. So kind of like that one game of Absolver is how it would be, I think. That game is actually pretty dope. That game's pretty fun. The problem is their server isn't the best, so it can be very laggy sometimes.
Yeah, there's been a lot of weird spin-offs of different titles, both from Capcom and from NRS, like, or not NRS, but before when they were like Midway, like spin-offs of MK and such, like the side scroll or something like just Deception and those other games, and then Capcom has all these weird like some semi-RPG and these mobile games and stuff, and like. I don't know. It's just because fighting games are. I hate saying fighting games are niche because they are, but like they're getting better. But I guess like the dinosaurs upstairs, they just really don't want to take risks much anymore because video games are so expensive to create now, and Street Fighter 6 sounds way bigger than like some type of side story thing, right? It just sounds so big. Same with Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat 11. It just sounds more impactful.
They were trying so hard to avoid the numbers for a while, though, because MK9 wasn't called 9. It was called, like, just Mortal Kombat. And, like, if you wanted to be specific, you called it Mortal Kombat 2011. But all the fans and players were like, nah, it's MK9. Because that's easier to say. So it's MK9. And then MKX, which is a clever way of saying 10. But like that one YouTuber, The Fourth Snake, pointed out, it's not actually their 10th game. Like, they're not even counting correctly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not. But... even if you count just the fighting games, it's not their 10th one. Because you have Shaolin monks and funny tie-ins like that don't count as like the main sequence. But it's still not their 10th or 11th game. They're just going with that, which I'm okay with. You can always give it a clever name. It's like with movies too. When movies get too high of a number, they know it's stupid. So they start giving them like different names. Like they didn't want to call it Paranormal Activity 5. So they gave it some subtitle instead. Because I know how dumb it sounds to be on 5 and 6 and all that.
That's when you give it the crazy titles like Forever. infinity.
Mortal Kombat forever.
Yeah, forever. It's the best one.
Eternal probably better because forever sounds too happy. Like eternal sounds like creepy. Yeah, that could work. Mortal Kombat Eternal.
Yeah.
You know, any number of things. But they already fought Chronica though, so they can't do some being who lives forever or something. That would have been like the idea behind that. That's like one of the worst bosses ever. Like she's really cool what she can do, and she's cheap, which a boss should be. But you can't even combo her, which feels super unfair. Like you can't launch her into the air. So
I like the cheap boss characters in fighting games, but yeah, it was pretty frustrating.
It's like you can cheese her. You can just do stun locks instead, which is actually objectively easier. And I don't think she can even block really. Like she kind of can, but it's not like other characters where she has like reversal cancels and stuff. She has slow moves, so you can just keep block stunning her, and she's just like she's screwed. I want to curse, but YouTube, the overlords won't let us say any bad words.
Be careful,
so
bro.
yeah, I think now we'll segue into the more personal question. So what made you want to start a YouTube channel?
If someone wants to start a YouTube channel?
What made you want to start a YouTube channel?
What made me want to start a YouTube channel? I was like, whoa, you're crazy. You want to start a YouTube channel now?
Dude, it's too late in the game. It's too late.
Man. YouTube was like, I kind of just used it because I liked recording stuff and just recording for myself. Like back in the day, back, VHS, man. When I was in the arcades, I liked to record my own combo videos or playthroughs of games. And I would literally record it over some movie tapes, a VHS on my VCR, and then just watch it for later. Like I kind of did the YouTube thing before there was YouTube. It was weird. And then after a while, when YouTube finally came out, my buddy told me about it, and he's like, "Hey, you can upload videos and stuff." I'm like, "That's really cool." And another thing too, I was part of this achievement community back in the day, where achievements just came out for 360, and I was really into it. And I was doing some guides on forums, and I'm like, "Oh, I should do a video on how to explain some things." And that's what I used YouTube for on a platform. So my first videos are it's way out there, a whole bunch of different games, and I did some cool runs and stuff. I used to really love Dead Rising. I did this really wacky run in Dead Rising 2 where I used no weapons. It was melee only, 100% the game, and it was like a speed run and just all this weird stuff before I even did fighting games. And then it wasn't until Street Fighter 4 came out. And I'm like, oh, Street Fighter 4, I used to play Street Fighter. And the trials were so hard. And there are so many things that you need to know as a fighting game player to understand that the game doesn't explain to you. And Street Fighter 4, like weird things like, in order to cancel a chain, you have to link the last hit from a chain, things like that. Weird nuances of Street Fighter 4. And I did a video with the hand cam showing the hands, just showing, to help people as much as possible, uploaded it. And then that's where basically everything got started. The ball got rolling. And I'm like, oh, looks like fighting games is my thing now.
Yeah, I know people typically don't watch older videos because they get lost in the ether, but for anyone who's not aware, that was what Vesper used to do. He would just do really tough combo trials, and he had his hand cam that showed him do the god's work of doing these really difficult, like, trial 10s and stuff. The King of Fighters 13 one was one of the tougher ones. You said you rated like on a scale of 1 to 10, it's like a 10 in terms of difficulty, and I'm like, it looks tough. And I tried to learn a fight stick playing that game. And then I realized that like fight sticks are more for people who started out at the arcades and wanted to keep doing it. Whereas like I had already mastered a controller, so like moving to an arcade stick is unnecessary. You can already use like the controller. Aside from some characters like Juri in Street Fighter 4 pretty much compels you to use a stick because you have to hold buttons down while you play.
Some characters are easier on stick, it's true.
A character came out in Soul Calibur 6 who's a bit more challenging in that regard, but thankfully you can cheat. It's Hilda. Hilda requires you to hold down buttons too while you fight. But the cool thing about that game is that, well, actually not just hold down, it requires you to release the button for a certain attack to come out. Right. So you hold it and then release later and a different attack comes out. But in that game, if you hold Y and B, which is B plus K in Soul Calibur, if you release B plus K, it gives you B. So if you know that, it's much easier for your thumb to hold down B and K than it is to hold down just like B. So you can like hold down both and then release. Or you can do like a multi-button attack and then release it and you get the combo. So it's really nice in that regard. Like I can actually play Hilda at a good high enough level to be competitive without having to play on a stick. But Juri, it's like there is no way. I could do some basic combos, but nothing crazy. Accessibility is a very important thing in fighting games. You don't want to completely erase the motions and inputs from special moves because people need to understand that part of that is the actual balance of the fighting game.
But at the same time, you don't want to alienate new players, right? And thinking, oh, do I have to buy this $200 stick just to play? It's a huge turnoff as well. So accessibility is always a hot topic for fighting games.
Dude, until Street Fighter V came out, back when I was playing Street Fighter 4 and there were rumors of a Street Fighter 5, I was thinking, I wouldn't be against the idea of Street Fighter just being a 4-button fighting game, just for one game, and just see if it works. Like, Ryu doesn't have light, medium, and heavy. He has light, heavy, light, heavy. Like, like those two things. Heavy kick,
Marvel too.
light kick. Yeah, just like that kind of thing, and see if it works out. And now that I played Street Fighter 5, they made it so much more intuitive, and I was like, okay, this game can work with 6 buttons on a controller. They just had to take away some of the more ridiculous elements that it had in 4. And speaking of like confusing terminology, that's one of the reasons my channel, I made it as well, though I was mostly just inspired. I've said multiple times that Beiruti, his channel was what inspired me, and he was playing MK9, and I was such a pleb that I thought that MK9 being 2D again was a step backwards. I was like, what are you doing? Because I'm such a pleb. And then I look at gameplay and I'm like, oh, it looks really fun actually. It looks like really good. And I watch him play it, and he's not only good at the game, but he's a very genuine, warm person. He's very bubbly, and he's getting you like hyped up. And I was like, wow, he's not only playing the game well, but he's like making me want to play it because he's so fun and energetic. Like, I want to do that. So I thought I'd try my YouTube channels, and I was like middle school, high-pitched voice. It was terrible. Like, it was a bad idea. I deleted those videos a long time ago.
Oh, did you?
Oh, yeah.
What?
Oh, yeah, my oldest videos are gone. I think we've talked about this. Like, my older videos are deleted. Like, they're gone.
Do you at least have it like stored on some ancient external?
If so, it's been thrown away. I don't really keep very many things. You can see behind me, I only keep the essentials. But yeah. I had some MK9 videos back in the day. I think some of those are still private on my channel, but I don't think you can see any of my MK9 videos. And even in those, I have a higher pitch voice. And I'm trying to make it deeper, like on purpose. I'm deepening my voice. But as a result, I'll get out of breath really quickly. So like there'll be long pauses and stuff. And I was making guides back then too, just trying to like make guides. And they were terrible because I didn't understand certain things. Like just simple things like how a character can actually have a useless EX move. Like you want to talk about why it could be used, but then you think about it and you're like, it's actually useless. I should just be honest and say that it's useless. Like,
let's go on this rant, this tangent.
We'll just let them know. Because Sub-Zero had a move in MK9, his Ice Puddle, which was like the please hit me move. Because even if he comboed into it, it had such long startup, the opponent could see you go for it and have time to like, even a slow person go, oh, and just hit you. Because like, the animation was so long. So you would never go for the Ice Puddle. It would only catch your friends who don't play fighting games, and you just throw it out and they go, oh shit, unblockable. But anyone who plays the game is like, oh, I'm just going to mess you up for going for that. So I should have told them like, oh, it's useless. But I was trying to point out like how you could use it, and everyone's like, you just wake up and blow through that, right? It's not going to work. Because in MK9 you had armor and invincibility. So you could just blow through anything.
I remember like my first videos were done. I didn't have a capture card, so I just had a camcorder. And they're pretty cringe.
Phil, the DSP era.
I watch them sometimes. They're pretty cringe, but I still get a good chuckle. Like I do, guys. I sit down. There's like zero editing. My talking skills were so horrible. The lighting is terrible because it's like a dark room. But I don't know. It's a good time. So I still make sure to keep the footage.
I watched an old Injustice video. Like we're talking Injustice 1, right?
Oh yeah.
And I'm watching it, and I'm thinking while I'm watching it, I'm like, God damn, I was so much better at talking on the fly and playing, and then I remember, oh wait, it's post-recording. Like I'm totally lying here. I'm pretending to be playing and talking, but I knew I didn't have the ability to do that. At least not play well. And when you have a smaller channel, you're a lot more self-conscious about being good at the start of the video. Like you want to nail it right away, because otherwise they're gonna go, oh, you suck. Whereas when you have a bigger channel, you can play bad. It doesn't really matter because people know, oh, I've seen other videos where he does well. Or you also have cheerleaders in the comment section, which love all of you, who are always like being nice no matter what, right? So it's a lot easier to like show your lesser gameplay when you're more popular. But when you have like no subscribers and like a good video is like 30 views, you want to make sure that like everyone's seeing your best gameplay. So it's like I find my best matches and throw post commentary, and I'm like, oh, I'm BSing this one. That's why I sound so smooth, and I'm doing a long combo while talking. By the way, everyone, if you want to know if like a YouTuber you watch is doing post commentary, one of the dead giveaways is if they're talking super well during a combo. That's like a dead giveaway, because most people they shut up when they do a combo. Not because the combo is hard, but like your brain just thinks, oh, no reason to talk right now. I'm doing this, like I'm doing the combo.
or they're instantly able to explain the situation without any stuttering whatsoever. It's very narrated. It's pretty obvious.
And they don't
Some people like it.
off.
Like even people know they like it, but it does kind of take away the charm of that live game experience, you know?
Yeah, the only exception would be like if you know it's post commentary, that can be fun. Like when someone's like, "Oh, here's a tournament match that I played, and I'm going to give you post commentary over it." Like that can be fun.
Yep.
But otherwise it is deceitful if they don't let you know right away that it's post commentary. There are some people who I've told my friends who are like, "Oh, I love this YouTuber," and I'm like, pretty sure he does post commentary. And they're like, "Why?" I'm like, "I'm pretty sure he does because I never hear his buttons." And he's playing like a really fast-paced game. He should be able to hear his controller or like his pad, and I never hear anything. I don't hear his stick. So I think that he's a post commentator.
We need to go on a witch hunt, man. We need a sealed approval on channels. Sealed approval, legit.
Find out where they live and knock on their door to see if it shows up during the stuff.
Yeah,
dude, there are some YouTubers. I don't want to say any names, but there are some YouTubers who they upload just gameplay sometimes, not even commentary, which I'm impressed they still get views that way because they'll get just as many views on a video that has no commentary.
Oh, replay channel.
Well, those are a different thing for sure, yeah.
Oh.
But I'm saying they're both. Like they'll do full face cam gameplay sometimes, but every now and then just upload only gameplay with no commentary. And I'm like, that's awesome, you still get views. But then again, I get cynical and I'm like, how do I know it's you playing? Could be someone else and you're just uploading like they have the controller and we don't know.
Yeah.
But that could be anybody. Like
it I don't show my face cam when I play. Man. You never know.
Oh yeah, that's true. Could you do that?
You never know.
Dude, I've thought about doing that for fun, but like only the viewers would know. Where I would like troll online because my buddy is really good at Tekken. He goes to local tournaments. He gets on stream a lot. It's super hype. If y'all haven't experienced watching your friends play at a tournament, it's way more hype than even you yourself playing. You're like cheerleading for him. It's a lot of fun. But basically, he's really good at Tekken. And I've thought, dude, if you came over to my house and I'm like a super low level Tekken player, you could like be attacking people who are like high level and really upsetting them. But it's because like I shouldn't be able to do that. I already kind of do that with his friends because he trains me. And every now and then I play with his friends who are all like high ranks, like reds, yellows, purples. And I can beat them. And they get really mad because they see my low rank. And I think before we even fight, they have an expectation of how bad I should be. But they don't realize I never play ranked. So that's why there's like this disconnect. It doesn't help also though that I play 2D fighters against them sometimes. Like I'll play Eliza, who is a 2D character in Tekken. Like she still does 3D movement and stuff, but she was in a 2D game first. So people naturally hate her because the 2D characters play differently. Same with Akuma. If you play Akuma in Tekken, like they hate you right away because you're not playing Tekken.
I heard Akuma was destroying people for a while here.
Well, it's because he's not playing the game. It's kind of like if you were playing, well, actually, Laura is a good example of this, but it's not too extreme. But Laura in Street Fighter V has that sidestep move where she leans out of the way and just avoids attacks. That's like a Smash Bros thing that she's doing. Where she becomes invincible in place? That's a Smash Bros thing, but like she can do that in Street Fighter. So you could argue that Laura is not playing Street Fighter because she's not having to block, she's slipping away, which shouldn't be possible. Like who else can do that? A lot of people have to do an uppercut or something, which leaves them exposed. She just slips and she comes back. So it's like if someone could sidestep in a 2D fighting game. How mad would you be if they could sidestep, right? So that's how people feel about 2D characters. What were we talking about? We segued a lot there.
Yeah, we did. I mean, we were talking about YouTube.
Oh, that's what it is. Yes.
Channels, commentary.
Good. Yeah. So, what ignited your passion for fighting games, do you think? Because for me personally, I'm not even sure if I enjoyed fighting games before watching Beirut. I mean, of course, as a kid, you play fighting games already. You just naturally do. Like, everyone had Tekken 3 on the PS1. Like, everyone had Tekken 3. Everybody was playing the 3D Mortal Kombat games during the dark ages when there were no more fighting games being made. So, like, everyone just played Mortal Kombat. And you weren't good at it, but you wanted to unlock the costumes and create your custom characters, so you played Conquest mode. Me forgetting a block button even existed, so I just attacked when I was a kid playing Mortal Kombat, because no back to block in that game, block button, right? So that's why, like, for me, it wasn't really a passion. I just wanted to do the YouTube channel like I'd seen other people do, and I wanted to be like them and inspire people, get them happy, want them to make them play games. So what about you? What ignited your passion for fighting games?
To keep this answer relatively short, well, first off, I play a lot of different games competitively, but I also spent a lot of time in the arcades. A lot more time than I should have, actually. And I even worked in an arcade. So I'm always around different types of games, but I played a lot of fighting games specifically in the arcades. So I already had kind of a little head start before it started becoming a little mainstream and accessible on consoles. Like Street Fighter 4 was the big one, the resurgence of fighting games coming out everywhere. And like I said before, I did guides on stuff on a bunch of different games on YouTube. And it wasn't until those Street Fighter 4 trials where things really started to blow up and pick up. And yeah, I love teaching. We have a scene in our city too at the time where all of our arcades died in our city. Hey, so we had these get-togethers, and that's where the whole like Vesper arcade name comes from, because my place, it was Vesper Arcade. So everyone would have weeklies at my place. If you search on my old videos, you'll see some really cringy videos with like ton of shoot. Was that?
That's so cool that you did that. That's such a cool thing, because I was watching a video where this guy was breaking down salty moments in Smash tournaments. And this one guy, he has relatively big tournaments that he holds, but they're at his house. Yeah. And the reason it was an issue is because one guy got mad and almost like threw a chair. And it's like, careful, you're on private property, bucko. Like, you can't just chuck that chair. And so he stopped himself before he even threw it, because he realized like what trouble he'd be in, like throwing someone's chair on stream in their own house. That's just those Smash players, man. I'm kind of sad that we don't get that very much from Mortal Kombat. The worst we've had for Mortal Kombat in terms of salt is that one guy who just got up and started screaming in Scar's face, and he just flipped him off.
I saw that.
That was like the best we've had. Like they're pretty reserved, actually, those NetherRealm fighters.
Moment,
like otherwise just happy stuff.
Yeah. there's a lot of thuggery videos you can search up on fighting games in general.
I love that term, because they banned that in some tournaments. Did you see that that list? It was hilarious.
No, I didn't.
There was like a tournament where they had like all these new rules, and it was going to bleed over into a bunch of tournament scenes. But one of the list of things you couldn't do, well, because there's like a bunch of regular stuff, but like one of them was like no money matches, like no gambling, this and that, right? Yeah. But one of them literally said no thuggery.
No thuggery.
It's like, now we got a problem. Okay.
Yeah, a little vague.
Thuggery is a big thing in the fighting game scene. Okay.
Yeah.
Especially with Tekken, I was surprised. Like, not at the high level, but at EVO and Combo Breaker, there was the most smack talk with Tekken. And even people who weren't that good had their own they had their groupies that followed him around. I had one guy that I played. I'm not very good at Tekken 7. I'm in pools. I almost escaped pools, but didn't quite. But I'm playing, and this guy had an entourage of like 7 people who were hyping him up whenever he like landed a hit on me.
The peanut gallery, man.
Yeah, and it's super deterring because they're yelling super loud. But I would just dust the guy like every single time. I think I won like 6 straight rounds on him. He didn't even like get around. He had some good stuff he was doing, but again, I was playing Eliza, 2D character. No one knows what the F to do. So I ended up going straight through him. And you always have that great moment where you turn back and smile at him, and there's like a whole crowd of guys like,
yeah.
Kind of like, oh. And I'm like, what, no cheering for me?
Fighting games they're so competitive because it's 1v1. That's what makes it so good. Dude, you can't hide behind your team, right? You have to perform. And it's funny you mentioned the peanut gallery. Like, there was this back when Mortal Kombat 9 first came out, there was a tournament in a theater near me. And I, for reasons we won't get into, was able to access this game a week in advance. And I was learning stuff with Reptile. And in the theater, I was just absolutely the tournament was the first day the game came out. So I was just mauling people with a Reptile, and I had these kids in the theater that were watching all my matches, and they were like basically my cheerleaders. And they were when my name would get called up and I go against somebody, the kids in the background would be like, "Oh, you're against that guy? You're dead, man." You're dead.
Yeah, so you're lucky because in Texas, at least where I live, there are no arcades. Like, there are some new ones popping up because games are getting popular again. But in Texas, there were no arcades. The best thing we had was there are some restaurants and there are some movie theaters that have little arcades attached to them. And if you were lucky, there was like a fighting game one there. And even then, it wasn't really like meant to be. It was like, wasn't just a fighting game. It shared a bunch of them, and you cycled through and you'd scroll through the index and you would find a fighting game in there. So even the arcade itself didn't respond the way a fighting game cabinet should, where it's like way more responsive. And they had the dumb baseball bat joysticks, which aren't what you want.
The bat
for, like,
tops.
Which you can't do the wine glass, which is what I actually do when I'm doing the arcades. I have like it in the middle, and you can't do that.
You can't be classy.
You got a baseball bat it.
Some
or
people
you could like slap it, I guess.
Yeah, the hapsticks. Yeah, man. Like I still have we got some rec rooms and stuff in my city with arcades, but they're all arcades are totally different. Like when someone thinks of an arcade, it's totally different now. There's a bunch of mobile games. We see like Angry Bird stuff, and it's mostly kids and ticket games and stuff. It's not the same. Before it used to be musky and the cigarette smoke and
the degenerates.
So much thuggery and there's like degenerates.
There you go, the degenerates. Yeah, the underlying people.
There's always that dude, and he always has his girlfriend standing beside him, but she never says a word. She just stares soullessly into the screen as she knows she has to stand there for 4 hours straight. Like that was my impression of arcades.
Oh, so many things I want to add to the conversation, but again, the YouTube overlords would not approve. Yeah. Have you ever gone to Combo Breaker, that tournament?
No, I have not, but I love that tournament.
So that city, and Combo Breaker itself is right next to the biggest arcade in the nation. Oh. And I had the pleasure of going there with Callum, History Behind the Warrior, and Ketchup and Mustard, the Mortal Kombat commentators and pro players. And they were taking us through and like giving us the whole tour, because apparently every single year they add several new cabinets and they're constantly expanding. I'm not sure if it was a cabinet every single month or if it was 12 cabinets a year, or if I'm greatly exaggerating the number, but every year they've increased by a set number of cabinets and they've stayed true to that rule, and it keeps getting bigger. And it's really interesting. And they had Darkstalkers and all of that, and each cabinet was like just the one game. So that was nice. It's like, oh, here's the Darkstalkers cabinet, here's the Vampire Savior cabinet, and like here's Street Fighter 2, here's Street Fighter 2 Turbo. And like they were even doing that distinction. Like it was pretty crazy. Whichever version of Street Fighter 2 you wanted, they had it. Which it still blew my mind when I was playing the Street Fighter Anniversary that has all the different games. And I'm playing with my buddies. And I'm like, when did dashing first happen in Street Fighter? What game had dashing? And I think I was playing Alpha, and even Alpha I think didn't have like the dashing yet. And I'm like, wait, so I just walk? And he's like, yeah, you walk forward and walk
Nash
back.
Had a dash. Pretty sure. Only Nash, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, like 3 was when like the dashing came in, like Third Strike and stuff. I think they were saying, which is crazy, because I'm walking forward in Alpha and I'm like, what do I do? Oh yeah, and Alpha has air blocking, which I thought was bizarre too. You can jump in and guard, right? Like as you're coming down from the jump.
Yeah.
Which is super rare for a lot of 2D fighting games outside of anime fighters. Typically, you can't block while jumping. You give up like all your defense to go in the air.
Right.
And not in that game. You can jump and just block. And I'm like, dude, it's a grappler's wet dream, because I can jump in, totally block, and I can do my 720 as I'm coming down from while walking. Like I can just buffer it. And it's really funny. Okay, so let's segue into the next one. I gotta find a new word besides segue. What's a good synonym? Okay, so out of all the fighting games you've played, which one do you think has the most sentimental value? Which one holds a special place in your heart?
Well, my favorite fighting game is Marvel vs. Capcom 2, because that is the first fighting game that got me competitive in fighting games. Like the first fighting game I ever played was Street Fighter 2 Turbo. I played that growing up with my brother, like really young, 4 years old. And I have vague memories of this, but I had some kind of neighbor that he was much older than me. He was like 18 or something, and he used to kick my ass at Street Fighter. Ooh. Like he wouldn't tell me how to play it. Like he would do like an uppercut with Ken or a fireball. I'm like, how do I do that? And he would never tell me.
He's like, one of those.
He would just do it on me, and he would just beat on me all day. And I'm like, dude, if I ever find this guy again, I'm gonna destroy this guy in Street Fighter. That's
I have a friend like that to this day, who every now and then we play with. He's a great guy, but he will not tell you what he's doing. Whereas me, I'm like, I won't tell you until after the match is over, just so you can't. I want the win still. Even if we're only playing in a party, like just for fun, I still want to get the win. I'm not going to tell you mid-match how to beat me. But then when it's done, I'm like, oh, by the way, that move has like a huge weakness. Like, here it is, right?
Yeah.
I was doing something similar with my buddy where I told him about 2B and Soul Calibur. How if you just sidestep, she's stuck in her animation. She has like the longest recovery of any character. So even though she's super hard to read, if you do manage to get that sidestep or you duck under my attack, I'm just stuck animating. So you can just punish me. But yeah.
But yeah, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, like I have a lot of fond memories of it. It was also very interesting because in the arcades, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, not all the characters were released at once. There was only like 12 or something at the beginning, and then after a certain amount of money was inserted into the machine, it would unlock the next character, and we never knew who the other characters were. there wasn't like
That's
Twitter
such a great way
or
to
YouTube
eat your
back
quarters.
then.
That's funny.
Yeah, we only had game facts, and
that's the first microtransactions.
And it was literally every Friday. So, and that's perfect, right? Because that's when everyone hangs out after school. So every Friday we'd run to the arcade and see which character was released, and it was great, man. And then, like I said, a lot of tournaments. Marvel's Capcom 2, just a lot of fond memories, just because it's one of the first competitive fighting games I started with.
I love that game too. I played it at the restaurant, Fuddruckers, because they had it. It was one of the games there. And you could play as Spider-Man, which was dope. And then even doper, you could play as Venom. Venom, like back when I was a kid, I loved him even more than Spider-Man, because in the 90s, his comics were super big. He's kind of like Deadpool in that era. He's very goofy, but he's super OP. He fought Superman at one point in one of the comics, and when they interrupt the fight, it seems like Venom is winning somehow. So to give you an idea of how popular Venom was, the writers were having him win in that fight because of how popular he is. So that was awesome. And then I think at a track meet, I did really good, got a gold medal. And the reward was I could get a game. And I didn't know it was the second game. I thought it was the first Marvel game. So I bought that at GameStop or whatever. Yeah. And I brought it home and I was like, where are all the characters? Because the roster is like immediately smaller than Marvel 2. And so I felt kind of ripped off. I'm like, dang, got the wrong one. But I still had a lot of fun with it because you can unlock Orange Venom and all that cool stuff, who's like super fast and all that. So I still enjoyed it quite a lot. So
was it on Dreamcast?
On Dreamcast. Well, I was playing it on PS1 or 2. One of those, yeah. Because I never had any fancy. I only had Sony growing up. That's all I had. Right. Hit the mic super hard. It's going to sound great. But yeah, I only had Sony. So yeah, I wouldn't know if it was on that console or not. Maybe. Speaking of, because we're staying on the fighting game topic, we have a lot of games that got rebooted. We had Killer Instinct, and then even more recently, we had Samurai Showdown. What fighting game franchise would you like to see rebooted the most if you had the power to like Thanos snap it into existence?
That's a tough one. I've thought about this the hard questions. Yeah, that's a tough one. I thought this sometimes. I guess I would probably choose Darkstalkers.
There you go.
I'm more on the Capcom side for fighting games for sure, and Darkstalkers, the universe, having a more mature Capcom fighting game, I would really like to see. I think a lot of people would agree with me on the Darkstalkers thing too. We've had a lot of reboots for a lot of franchises that have been gone for a while, and Darkstalkers is one of the key popular ones I think that are missing, and a lot of potential.
Yeah, it's a very pretty game, and like even though it looks great in pixel, I think a lot of people would love to see it 3D. And honestly, the way Street Fighter V looks right now, aside from some characters who you can tell were offshored to like different studios, but some characters like Urien who look great, if you could imagine Darkstalkers even in just that style, it would fit so well. It would work. You don't have to go for some crazy hyper-realistic. You can go for that semi-stylized look, and it would still look really good for Darkstalkers. And I'm glad you said that, because that's my second choice. And I was thinking about it myself. So for me, even though it's not a very competitive fighting game, at least not in the tournament sense, I want to see Bloody Roar come back.
Bloody Roar.
That's what I want to see. That was actually my, to go back to an earlier question, that was like my first love too, as far as like actually getting good at a fighting game, because I was really enjoying it. And it's just a really interesting game because it had V-Trigger in a way before that was even a thing. Yeah. Because when you turn into the monster, that's what's happening. And what's cool about that, for anyone who hasn't played, it's a 3-button fighting game normally. But when you enter that beast mode, you get a fourth button, which is circle, that does all your beast attacks. So some strings now have an extra attack added on. And sometimes you have an entire string with just that button. It's one of those easier games. It's kind of like the, like those, what do you call them, like Jump Force or My Hero Academia that come out now, where you can like mash a single button and get a string. It's very much like that in some regards, but it had real combos if you wanted to learn them. And it had really cool dodge mechanics and parries and stuff like that. So it had deeper stuff. But that game was so much fun for me. I was that kid who would bring his entire console to like my friend's birthday party, and we'd play a bunch of different games. And I brought all the games they wanted, but I was kind of hoping they'd eventually get bored and we could play Bloody Roar just so I could try out my new character with them, right? And I loved Stun in that game. Thought he was so cool. He's what awakened my love for grapplers. And I like him because he's not a very big guy. He's like regular height compared to everyone else, but he has really cool throws. Same like with King, right? King's not super big compared to everyone else in Tekken. Unlike Marduk, who's gigantic. And I like Marduk. He's one of the characters I like. But someone like Zangief, to me, playing Zangief, it's like I don't feel satisfied beating somebody because he's so big. Of course he won. Yeah. He's a giant. But seeing a smaller person like chuck people around to me is more fascinating. My friend doesn't get it at all. He's like, what do you mean? That's dumb. That's a really nitpicky thing. And I'm like, I just prefer it when it's either a female grappler because they're super rare. Like our Mk or Laura. Laura's kind of a grappler. I wouldn't consider Laura.
So you don't want something stereotypical then?
I don't want the big beefcake.
Yeah, archetype. That. Yeah. Like, it's like a character, like if someone looks at Zangief, before even playing them, they kind of have an idea who Zangief is already, what kind of character they are. And you kind of want to.
I miss back in the Marvel 2D era when Zangief was so big that his back muscles were actually above his head. So his head was like in the center of his body because he's so massive. Like his head just floated there. It was so funny. And in some games, they made it seem like he had a disorder. Like he made the goofiest faces. And I'm like, he's not a dummy. He's just big. Like, why would he have those kind of facial expressions? But it's just Japan being silly.
Really animated.
Yeah, and for a while he was a villain, and then he's been retconned to have never been a villain. So it's that kind of thing.
I can't keep track, bro. I can't keep track.
Oh, Capcom, like my buddy, again, like History Behind the Warrior, he has mentioned that Street Fighter is his least favorite game to cover because not only is it hard to actually get research that's correct to find out what's canon and what's not, but you'll get so many people who are adamant in the comment section who are for some reason mad at him for getting details wrong, despite the web of information he has to siphon through. And it's like, what do you expect one person to do, man? Like, come on, it's crazy. I think a lot of people assume that YouTubers have all day to make a single video, and then or like you have a whole week to make one video, and it's like, why is this video not perfect? And it's like, no, you must understand. Like a lot of the time when you watch that video, I made it that day. A lot of the time, like for me personally,
right?
And I work a day job, so I get home. Yeah. That video was made in less than 3 hours, Cupcake, and we're talking the editing and the thumbnail too. So no, I did not have all day to work on that. I'm not a full-time YouTuber. I don't think anybody at this point wants to be, even if they are with the way YouTube's working. So
it comes with the territory, man.
It's so shifty. YouTube is like sand. It's constantly falling up beneath your feet, and you're losing your footing. Yeah. It's crazy. There's undertow. Takes your views away. Steals them. But yeah, for me, Bloody Roar would be great. That'd be a great game to come back. I'd be super excited.
Published that game? Do you know?
No, and I used to know, and I think I also learned that they sold the rights and a different company now owns them, which was the issue because that company is known for sitting on franchises and never doing anything with them. They just want no one else to have them, so they just sit on it. Yeah.
Man, that sounds like, what's the company's name that's buying every single old IP? It'll hit me later.
I'm Disney. Later. Yeah, here's another one. So, what do you think is the best fighting game in terms of just overall fighting gaminess to come out in the past 5 years? I think that's a fair window.
The best fighting game? How do you define that?
Just the full package. And of course, everyone's different, right? So when I judge that kind of stuff, I think about like what's the most bang for your buck? Again, the more business-minded individual. But I'm thinking like, which one gives me the most stuff, you know?
Oh, man. This is a ridiculous I'm going to get blown up for this question.
Just like cut it out of the video entirely.
I only play Street Fighter 5. What do you think I'm going to say?
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, I don't think Mortal Kombat 11 is the best. Just to get myself flamed first, because I'm known for Mortal Kombat 11, but I don't think it's the best game.
I do think every fighting game brings something to the table that I wish were in Street Fighter 5, for example.
I think if I were you, I'd say Street Fighter 4. If I was like a Capcom guy, because that's a really good game. We know Maximilian would say Marvel 3, because that's probably his game.
Right, or Killer Instinct.
Oh, yeah. Well, he had a hand in that one. He's going to be biased. He worked on that one personally.
That's true, too.
He's going to be a bit biased with that one.
Street Fighter 5, like, it's... Even though I've covered that game for a long time, and it's my main jam, I do genuinely really like it. A lot of people ask me what's my favorite Street Fighter. And I do say Street Fighter 5, but it does raise some eyebrows, and people are like, come on, Vesper, be real. But no, really, I really like Street Fighter 5. I think there are things to be desired casually, but to be competitive and pseudo-competitive, where you're just trying to rank up, I think Street Fighter 5 is fine. The netcode's ass, but if you want to compete, I really like the idea that Street Fighter 5 holds tournaments everywhere, all the time, and no matter where you live, you have an opportunity to do that. They're trying to concentrate more in 2020 to make that possible. But another thing too that it's a little consumer friendly as well because of the fact that you can get characters for free, all their expansions and balance patches and stuff for free. I think a lot of people overlook that these days compared to other fighting games in general. I mean, it's not like we're paying money for frame data here, but
God. Don't give these companies any ideas.
Right, or a training mode. But Street Fighter V definitely ain't perfect, and they can learn a lot of things from different fighting games as well.
God, I wish MK11 would take notes on that, or just like NetherRealm would like take notes from other fighting games. There's like really weird things in MK11 that just blow my mind why they are like it. Because I play older games and I'm like, the older games didn't do this. Why does it...
Give me an example.
Yeah, so this one's going to sound like you and I will get it. But this may sound a bit like complicated to some people. But so you know when you do a jump in Street Fighter, there's actual hits done to it. So that person is staggered, right? There's a window.
Yeah.
So you can hit someone, wait to see if it hits on your jump in, and then when you land, you have time to squeeze out a faster button.
I understand exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And MK11, what's bizarre is they require you to dial in the string before you touch the floor. They're not actually in hit stun. So even though the timing is the exact same, like if you were to count the frames from when you land to when the attack comes out, it's the same as it would be if you landed and then attacked. But the game only lets you combo if you dial in the string before you touch the floor.
It will eat your inputs if you do it late. Yeah.
Yeah, and not only is that counterintuitive in the sense that if you do a jump in 1 and your character's string is 1-1-1, you're having to press 1 4 times. And if you press it 5 times by accident, the game won't let you special cancel. That's one of the weird things about the game also. So it's already tougher to do, but also it messes up your block strings because you want to dial in your string from when they get hit. But if they block your jump in and then you dialed in the string, when you land, you get 2 instead of 1. So if your string is like 1, 2, 3, you get 2. You do jumping 1 and then 2. And it's like, no, I wanted to do 1, 2, 3 when I landed, but the game gave me 2 because I landed. And it does not keep track of your attacks if the opponent blocks. So it's
like Mortal Kombat,
weird. And MKX did not have this problem. It happened in Injustice 2.
I did a video talking about the whole dial-in combos. In Mortal Kombat 11, it's more of there are hit confirmed, and they're very strong when a character has a hit confirmed because other characters lack it. But it seems like the way their philosophy with Mortal Kombat 11 is more about committing, and the dial-in string is the read. So if you were to hit confirm jump-ins, what I'm saying is basically they would run into a situation where everyone's jumping in with the same string. They're going to jump in with their strongest, safest string, and if it happens to hit, they'll cash out for damage, and if it doesn't, then you're relatively safe. They don't want you to do that. They want you to be like, I think he's going to mash buttons in between here, so I'm going to do this string. I think he's just going to be overly defensive, and I'm going to throw him and not do the whole string. Mortal Kombat 11 is a lot of that. There are some things that are kind of Tekken style with it as well. Like, even though Mortal Kombat 11 is a 2.5D game, there's a lot of 3D fighting game elements to it as well.
Yes, sir.
There's a lot of people compared Mortal Kombat 11 to Street Fighter 5, but the more I played it, I'm like, we should compare this more to Tekken, I think.
In a lot of ways, and that's why it's frustrating sometimes, because in Tekken, they have the forethought to realize, okay, if our character has a hopping move, we're going to make them completely low and vulnerable, like pretty early in that move. But in Mortal Kombat 11, they don't. In Mortal Kombat 11, you can do a move where your character is visibly hopping off the ground, and the game even treats you as airborne, meaning that if the opponent was to do an air command grab, it would catch you out of that move. So the game is treating you as airborne, but the game, for the most part, doesn't even have hitboxes. It has what's called mesh colliders, which I learned that back when I worked on games. But what that means is the character's polygonal mesh is their actual hitbox. So if I'm playing a character who jumps in the air and dangles their foot down, that dangling foot can be hit.
If it's a polygonal mesh, doesn't that make the game kind of hard to bounce because characters are bigger than others?
It's not. Yeah, that's one issue. Females already have different hitboxes. Like females, certain combos don't work on them in MK11. You have to change your combos for female characters, for some fighters. And then on top of that, what's even worse is the animations themselves. Some of them are not, they were meant to have a hitbox because like a character will do like a sideways chop like this, where their hand is doing that. And if you look at that from a 2D angle, look how thin that mesh is. Like, what are the odds of me hitting you with that?
Exactly.
And it happens all the time in MK11. The first hit lands, but your follow-up, that little slice, goes right beneath their body and doesn't count, even though they're airborne right in front of you. Because it's only that exact mesh that's sliding through.
Yeah, if it's a mesh, then that makes idle stances very difficult, too. Because what if someone has a wide stance?
That's been a thing since MKX. And MKX, if you're playing Shinnok, I noticed this in training mode when I was doing stuff, but there's two characters that show it the most. Shinnok has an idle animation where when he idles for about 5 seconds, he leans back and like does this.
Right.
When he leans back, he's actually leaning back. His hitbox leans with his mesh, so your jabs miss.
That's weird.
Yeah, and not only that, but if you get right in his face and try to do a jab, you can't walk any further forward than where his foot is, because that's where his mesh is, right? And your jab still misses him because he's leaning back.
I guess from a visual aesthetic standpoint, you're like, well, that would be real life. Like, I see the limb, therefore I can hit it. It's real life. But from a balancing standpoint and a mechanical standpoint, there's a reason why fighting games use hitbox.
It wasn't even a visual thing, unfortunately. I can almost guarantee you it was to save time. Because to make,
what?
Yeah.
You're saying because it's lazy?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I know it again because I worked on games. To make someone's mesh their hitbox is a simple check in the game engine. It's an actual pre-default. You just scroll over to the inspector tab and you're like, all these different settings, and one of them says mesh collider. And you're like, yes, make their mesh a collision detector. And you just check it. And now their body is now a hitbox detector. That's how it works. And some characters do have hitboxes on certain moves. Like, and it's like, Yun in Street Fighter 4 had like the back shove and it like hit way above him. Some characters in Street Fighter, or is it Yang? One of them had like the back shove that like had a huge hitbox on it in 4.
Okay.
And in Mortal Kombat, some characters like Sub-Zero and Shao Kahn have this running kick. And the move is so slow that I think the developers thought, it has to have a hitbox, otherwise it's never going to hit anybody. So when you do that move, I swear it catches people out of orbit. Like they'll be way in the air, and you kick them out of the sky and they fly backwards. So like some moves have hitboxes, but most of them don't. They're just the mesh collider because it saves time. And I'm not against that. But the problem is you would have had to communicate with the animators in advance to let them know that's how the game works, because they would have purposely made the moves like more wider reaching, or like they would have made their hand be like this instead of this. So it's going to hit more likely, right? Like just little things like that.
It's interesting. There's a lot of things about on NRS fighting games that are a lot different.
And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things I like about it. Like it was really ballsy of them to make a meter that refills on its own, because I don't think any other fighting game really had that. And
dude, we got to do a podcast on that. I can do an entire podcast talking about how that system drives me crazy. The problems that the infinite meter and the NRS kind of flair of the long big stages stuff. I don't want to get into it because I can go on a huge tangent.
That was more of an MK9 thing, yeah. Because in MK9, certain stages had different links, which is like pretty rare in a lot of games. I mean, aside from 3D ones, which the whole point of a 3D fighting game is the stages actually do affect gameplay a lot.
Yeah, and the interactables, right?
Yeah, I still to this day like never use any interactables. My brain doesn't even think of them as an option because like so many fighting games don't have them. So I ignore them completely.
Jump off the wall because I'm in the corner.
That's a really good one. Like in the corner is the only time I use them, because you either have the run, which is really good, or you have the really cheap throw where you get every character gets a command grab when they're in the corner,
right?
Which is really funny.
And many characters have projectiles in Mortal Kombat. Many characters. Yeah, so you're not really thinking that you need it. There's a tool missing that you need that's an interactable. I don't want to sound too negative on Mortal Kombat. I gotta say a positive here. Give me a chance to say something positive. One thing I love about Mortal Kombat 11 is the whole season idea to ranked. I love it. Like how they have short seasons and then your rank restarts and you go for the grind again. Oh, please add that to every single fight.
Great way to keep people playing. I wish they would try a bit harder.
And then
with
you get a reward at the end.
Yeah.
Based on your ranked. Oh, it's beautiful. They do that a lot now for a lot of FPS titles and stuff, with battle passes and seasons. And I think that would work for fighting games easily.
And it's not just your rank. They also do it for just little challenges too, which is nice. So like if you reach a certain rank, you get stuff, but you also unlock stuff just for playing, which is also really cool. Like, oh, you did this many super attacks. Here's like a costume. You did this many pints of blood were spilled. Here's a brutality. Like that's all fun. Right. And the brutalities are the best part, I think, because they add new brutalities and new taunts, like new entire animations. That's cool.
Do they?
Yeah. Frost got a great one. Frost has one of my favorite. That's like a new one she got where it's almost kind of dirty. She pretty much straddles the opponent's head. Like she wraps her thighs around your head, and then because she's a robot, she just spins really fast and she twists your head off like a corkscrew, and like then she just hops off. And it's just kind of funny to look at her doing that. But like characters get new ones.
For research, like it's a way more intuitive, interactive way, a less boring way to get people to continue still playing the game, because like if you have like we'll use Street Fighter 5 as an example, like a fight money system where you need to do weeklies. Log in, do your weeklies. I want you to randomly do one trial. I want you to randomly watch a replay and play this match and throw this guy like 10 times. You know, whereas it's different because in Mortal Kombat, it's like, you know, you have more stuff to unlock and the seasons, and you just rank up and you just play like you normally do because there's more content. It's a better way of doing it.
It's a great idea. Yeah, for sure. So we're going to start wrapping this up. So I have a very important question to ask you because you are my ordained guest of this evening. So what are your plans for the future concerning your YouTube channel, Twitch, or any other social media stuff you're working on? The MLG back scratcher makes an appearance too.
Street Fighter 5 is going to die and I'm just going to retire. No, I don't know. Right now, man, like Street Fighter 5 just came out with a big content update. And there's just, I'm kind of really restless and waiting for basically 3 different fighting games right now. I'm waiting for Guilty Gear. I'm waiting for whatever Capcom's next fighting game title is, whether it be Street Fighter 6 or whatever they're working on, or the Riot fighting game, which I am very, very, very excited
League of
for.
Legends. Yeah, gotcha.
We need some new blood be added to fighting games to kind of, I really feel like they can show other developers what they're missing and how to take fighting games to the next level in terms of content and consumer and all that stuff, and really light a match under some of these developers and get them going. I want to add more competition. I think would be good.
League of Legends will definitely do the new blood part. I'm not sure, like League of Legends will either be a very good and unique look at fighting games, or it's going to be like an amateur's attempt at their first fighting game. It's going to be one of the two, because there are some ideas that are interesting, but part of them were trying to do that idea that robot fighting game had, which name I forget, which Rising Thunder. Yeah, Rising Thunder had the cooldown on special moves and stuff.
Yes.
They're thinking they may have that in the Riot fighting game because League of Legends already has that. And
very
that's
likely,
fine,
yes.
But I can tell you right now, I would not enjoy that. Telling me I can't do a special move right now just because, you just did it. You can't do it again. What do you mean?
Right.
That's ridiculous.
It's very difficult to find a way to balance special moves without inputs. You have to add some type of ways. Like, you cannot just have Zangief run up and one button 720 super you. There
like that
has
one
to
game
be
that
some
you
way
played.
to balance it.
What's that fighting
cooldowns
game?
is one way to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Because what's that one fighting game you played on your channel for a bit that was awesome? It had like only 7 characters.
Strike?
Is that what it is? Where it's very simple and the whole point is it's like an introduction fighting game? And it had the rock
you can't
guy
crouch.
who was a grappler. Yeah,
I love that game. Yeah,
he had a walk-up command grab though. He had a standing like SPD that was like really good. Yeah.
You know, you try to make these fighting games accessible, but at the end of the day, even accessibility will not save you against somebody who has experience in fighting games. It won't save you.
And to be fair,
that game is a perfect example of it.
And to be fair,
I mean, you do want to get new players in, but if you dumb down the game too hard, it's definitely going to hurt the game a lot. So it's tough to balance that, right? I mean, even League of Legends, I would not say that is a simple game to learn at all. Like you play that game, they're like, are you top, mid, bottom? Like they don't teach this stuff. You have to figure that out. You don't know which character belongs where.
I think now it finally tells you. But
does it?
Yeah, I saw my students playing it in my classroom, and I saw that like when you look at the character, it says like bot, mid, or top, like below their name. So it finally tells you. But that was my issue with League, is that I don't mind learning to play it. The shop was a big deal to me because I hated how you had to like constantly level up your character. I'm like, why can't we just fight each other and like it's just a matchup over and over again, right? But also it's like very restrictive. Like, be in this lane. If you're not in this lane, your teammates will be mad at you.
Right.
Even my friends who weren't pro, but they were like taking it pretty seriously. They're like, why are you in this lane? I'm like, I killed the guy in my lane. Stay in your lane. And I'm like,
Right. The community makes the meta. Yeah.
Dude, you can get banned for not playing the way the game is like supposed to be played. People have complained about that. that one guy literally complained because the one guy was roaming to different lanes. And he said like he reported that guy to Riot, and Riot liked the guy because he was a streamer for them, a huge advocate. And so they were on his side and banned that guy just for playing the character differently. And it's like, yo, what? And to be fair, that guy was kind of, I don't want to say he was trolling, but he was playing in a way that benefited his stats more than the team's stats. And that's why he was playing that way. But some guy tested it and found that plan actually works like really well if you just let the person do that. Mm-hmm. But the game doesn't allow for experimentation because they can ban you for playing a certain way. But there'll be a lot of new blood when that fighting game comes out, assuming it's good. And then on top of that, because Riot, like League of Legends tournaments have huge cash prizes. So people were saying that
that's an
a tournament for League of Legends is good, like for a fighting game even, it's going to have a much higher payout than what we're used to. And I don't win those things anyway. Whenever I go to a tournament, I'm just going to play. I'm not going to win.
Yeah.
But like for those who play professionally, I wouldn't be shocked if a lot of players who are mains at certain games, if it's like that big of an increase in payout, they'll just become mains at that game. They're just going to main League of Legends fighting game because like that's where the money is. And
and plus we all grew up playing League of Legends, all of us, you know. So it'll be easy. I am I mean, I don't want to go too much into this. There's so much to talk about, but Riot took a big risk, I think, actually using the League of Legends IP. They could have easily just made a fighting game and be like, it's the League of Legends world, but they're actually putting the League characters in.
Yeah, and
they're taking a huge risk with that. So that will be interesting to see, but it'll be very iconic, and hopefully it makes people take the first step, and then hopefully they're like, wow, this was really fun. Let's try some like more complex and mainstream fighting games and try to learn those too. And then trying to get you into the FGC in general.
Yep. All right. Did you want to talk about anything else concerning the plans for your channel or any future stuff?
No, I mean, I hope we can do this again, man. I feel like we can just yap for the rest of the night here, but we can always just do this again sometime and continue with different subjects.
Absolutely, or just keep I want to have regular guests, but I don't see why I couldn't just recycle and go back through returning guests and just have return visitors. Sounds great to me, because I have several guys lined
in the comments, please say, bring Vesper back in caps, please.
Just hashtag free Vesper. Where are you hiding him, underdog?
Because
he's in the basement.
Underdog, he ain't gonna invite me back unless you guys say so. He's just gonna be like, "Hey, I'm done with this guy."
Listen, the first one's free. The first one's free. After that, you got to pay. All right, man. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm so grateful you came on and shared your experience and time with me. It's very.
I appreciate it.
I'm very enigmatic about that. Very happy. Very enthusiastic.
I'm very humbled to be on this. Thank you.
My pleasure is all mine. A very great experience. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching and hope you enjoyed. Please check out Vesper Arcade. Where can they find you at?
They can find me on Vesper Arcade on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Twitch. I live stream almost every day. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, and you know where to find me because you're already on the channel. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. Have a fantastic night or morning, and I'll see you next time.